Civilians screamed. Marines scrambled. Intruders, someone shouted. Rob Lucci is here, cried another. Bonney's group tried to assess the situation. That's right. It's us being here that's weird. Luffy growled. Luffy was a threat, but no one was to fight him without clearance. After all, Straw Hat was now a Yonko. Escalating a conflict with his crew could start a war. Ichiwai, yelled someone nearby as agents relayed orders. Even a simple clash could turn into all-out war. Luffy motioned toward Bonney. I'll leave her to you. Keep your mouth shut. This is an internal government issue. One of the CP0 agents retorted coldly. Luffy's eyes locked onto the injured Atlas. He charged, raw anger brimming. This girl gave us food, he barked. She gave us meals to eat, you know. The news sent ripples through the Marine headquarters. The Straw Hat Pirates were on Egghead Island. Panic echoed through ornate corridors and across grim faces. One officer barked, demanding to know why. Another wondered aloud if Vegapunk had realized he was Cypherpole's next target. Chairs scraped against polished floors as top brass scrambled for answers. Fleet Admiral Sakazuki, as volcanic as ever, roared that if war was being declared, those brats should have consulted his fists first. Tensions swelled with each question. Did the Straw Hats force their way in? Was this Vegapunk's way of signaling danger? Worse, if Vegapunk allied himself with Luffy, the implications were devastating. A blow to the world government's already fragile image of strength. Orders flew fast. Kizaru was already en route, having been briefed in advance. Lucci was to stand down and wait for reinforcements. He must not fight the Straw Hat at any cost. And yet, cut to Egghead in the New World, where chaos spun like a tornado. Luffy had leapt into the fray, ignoring every warning. The skyline ruptured with zooming projectiles and exaggerated screams as the Straw Hats scrambled after their captain. Vegapunk's forces panicked. This will become a major incident. And then, boom. Spectators gasped. What they were seeing wasn't just speed, it was unnatural. Lucci had transformed. Gone was the stoic assassin in a dark suit. In his place now stood something primal and feral, his awakened form. Nico no Mi, model, leopard. Swirling black flames licked across his furred limbs. Straw Hat, don't think you're the only one who's gotten stronger, he growled, flexing sharpened claws. Shaka's group looked on in stunned confusion. Was that Rob Lucci? Is that really Straw Hat's transformation? The conversation spiraled. Some recognized the abilities as related to the Goma no Mi, or so they thought. But the truth was far deeper and older. The transformation Luffy had awakened was something else entirely. Shaka began to speak of legends and truths buried beneath centuries of lies. The warrior of liberation, the being who brought smiles and chaos in equal measure. The sun god, Nika. The real name of the fruit had been hidden, erased from history. Nika? Never heard of it, Nami muttered. Of course they hadn't. The form looked nothing like the traditional devil fruit records. In fact, the Goma no Mi didn't appear in the ancient encyclopedias at all. Luffy's current state was more than power. It was mythology in motion. The implication struck everyone differently. Vegapunk, pondering aloud, offered his theory. Devil fruits weren't just mutations. They were dreams made flesh. Manifestations of human desire, of possibility, of imagined futures. And as such, these abnormalities were punished by the sea itself, the mother of all nature. In a burst of awe, he declared, "Isn't this world so interesting?" Back on the battlefield, panic reigned. But before any bureaucratic stance could be held, the ground trembled. From the distance, Vegapunk's forces called in the Seraphims. S-Bear, S-Hawk, S-Shark, and S-Snake. These were not ordinary pacifistas. They were cloned from the warlords, and their authority chip wasn't enough, not compared to the one Sentomaru held. Both sides barked conflicting orders. The Seraphims hesitated, caught in overlapping commands. "Oh crap," muttered Kaku as they watched the tide of battle teeter. Vegapunk's allies desperately tried to seize control of the battlefield. A massive strike crashed into ground, Magura pistol, Luffy's new technique landed with devastating force, hammering Lucci into the floor. Nearby, the Seraphim units received new directives, some to engage, some to escort the Straw Hats to safety via vacuum rocket. The chaos multiplied, and amidst it all, revelations unfolded. Frankie, Jinbei, and others began piecing together the truth. The Seraphims were clones of the warlords. Frankie gaped. So you noticed it too? They had all fought these warriors once. Now they stared at younger versions, programmed and deadly. Luffy, grinning with carefree resolve, shouted, "It's fine." He didn't need to justify saving Vegapunk. Yeah, he requested it. And then came the final blow. Lucci, wild and merciless, launched himself at Sentomaru, ruthlessly impaling him through the chest. Shook. Sentomaru collapsed. Vegapunk's allies panicked, their final line of command faltering. Lucci snarled, "We just have to kill the control tower." Gasps erupted. Orders flew in every direction. "Seraphim, obey our orders." As Sentomaru falls face down, Luffy apologizes to him for distracting him. Sentomaru responds by saying, "Don't underestimate him." Lucci is determined to finish off Sentomaru as he outranks him in the command hierarchy. As he's about to finish off Sentomaru, Luffy counters him with his own attack. The attack landed like a meteorite. Lucci's eyes went wide as the world flipped around him, his body hurled back by the impact. Booming white, the panel exploded with energy as Luffy's absurd power collided with the CP0 assassin like a Looney Tunes wrecking ball fueled by divine chaos. Lucci came out of the wall, where was buried by Luffy's punch. As he was about to make a hit on Sentomaru again, Luffy's giant came out from the floor laughing. A storm of chaos erupted the moment Luffy burst onto the scene, his body twisting and erupting in flames and steam. Gear 5 was in full swing, and the rubbery warrior flung himself high into the air, arms flailing, boots ablaze. Rob Lucci snarled through gritted teeth at the sight of him, yelling the name that still haunted the world government, Straw Hat. The battlefield cracked under their impact. Fists collided with explosive force. Lucci darted in, using his feline hybrid speed, claws slashing. Luffy responded with a barrage of fists and comedic flexibility. Amid the ferocity, Luffy opened his mouth and took a massive cartoonish bite out of something mid-battle, chomping like it was lunchtime instead of life or death. The man's in Toontown while fighting a war. Icon behavior. With a stretch of his rubbery limbs, Luffy blasted backward, flinging himself across the battlefield like a living slingshot. Lucci surged after him, teeth bared, fists primed. But Luffy twisted his body once more, slamming his foot down and launching into the air with a twist of flames and speed. Stretch, stretch. Gum, gum. His body coiled through the pipes, and with one final shout, "Rocket!" he barreled forward with impossible speed, a literal missile of chaos. Across the battlefield, the Straw Hats and Vegapunk's allies raced for the vacuum rocket. Panic raced through the halls. Orders flew. "Get to the launch pad. Evacuate now." Vegapunk Lilith called out for everyone to get on board, as the vacuum rocket was prepping for takeoff. In the chaos, Hancock's Seraphim, a childlike clone bearing love powers, looked on with gratitude at her rescuers. Vegapunk smiled, noting how kind this version of Hancock seemed. "World's most dangerous child thanks you," with a head tilt and zero hesitation to heart blast someone into stone. Meanwhile, Sentomaru entrusted Luffy with Vegapunk's life, asking him to protect him like he would a Nakama. Luffy gave a thumbs up with that chaotic Gear 5 grin, promising to get him off the island no matter what. The rocket platform prepared for takeoff. Final boarding was called. T-minus 1 minute to launch. And then, FWOSH. The rocket blasted through the tunnel system like a railgun of air and light. Screams echoed inside the pod as Luffy's group launched from the Fabrio Stratum to the Labo Stratum in a blur of motion. Panels showed wide eyes, flapping lips, and all-around what-is-happening energy. 32 seconds later, they arrived. The vacuum rocket hyper capsule hissed to a halt inside the upper lab. Everyone staggered out, some clutching the walls. Frankie gasped at the speed. Bonney demanded answers, and someone finally blurted, "You're on Egghead's lab level now, the inner sanctum of Vegapunk's domain." Inside, the facility roared to life. An alarm blared. Intruders have infiltrated. All lab workers, secure the factory shelters. The Frontier Dome has been fortified. Red warning lights flashed. The world's most advanced lab was locking down. Outside, CP0 and the Marines watched with sharp eyes. Lucci stood, bruised but alert. In the lab cityscape, chaos stirred as Stussy and Kaku confirmed the defensive systems were no joke, and with 6 Vegapunks on the loose, including the original, the operation was far from simple. Lucci doesn't care. Not a single one of them would be allowed to escape the island, he said. Inside the ship, Vegapunk's words echoed. He had built the Seraphim to be the ultimate weapons. But now those very weapons, if taken by the enemy, could become unstoppable. Meanwhile, Bonney gritted her teeth with fury, declaring her intent. "I'm going to make Vegapunk turn my dad back to normal." Her rage was boiling, emotions twisting her face. One of the crew whispered to the others, "Remind me never to make her mad." Outside the lab, Kizaru's forces tightened their circle. He growled that the Straw Hat crew had allied with Vegapunk. And at the center of it all, Dr. Vegapunk remained calm. The genius who had invented synthetic devil fruits, cloned warlords, and now stood at the tipping point of the world's next great shift. Kuma rockets down with deadly force, crashing into a solid wall at Redport, the base of the Red Line. A massive explosion rocks the world government's territory as civilians scream and scatter in panic. The sheer impact leaves a smoking crater at the site. As the dust clears, murmurs ripple through the terrified crowd. "It's Bartholomew Kuma." Confusion erupts. Wasn't he supposed to be a celestial dragon's mindless slave? Didn't he escape from the Holy Land? What could he possibly be doing here? Kuma lies motionless in the crater as onlookers whisper frantically. Some recognize him as a former warlord of the sea, while others shout for immediate evacuation. The panic escalates as Kuma's body twitches. He moved. Meanwhile, Marine officers scramble. The transmission blares. All available units are to be deployed to Kuma's location. The man is deemed highly dangerous, and civilians are urgently warned to evacuate. There's no clear read on his programming or intent, and the possibility that he's still loyal to the Celestial Dragons keeps everyone on edge. A machine with no shred of humanity. But even now, Kuma's figure lumbers forward, his purpose still shrouded in mystery. Far away on Egghead Island, the island of the future, the situation spirals. Vegapunk's escape plan is underway. The Straw Hats crew and the Vegapunks have activated every emergency protocol. The island's security locks down all possible exit points as agents are seen attempting to block off routes from both the skies and the sea. The Vegapunk satellites assess the battlefield. They're boxed in, ships destroyed, airways compromised. Shaka confirms their enemies have already prepared for a blockade. Damn, the enemy is quite shrewd. With all exits compromised, Lilith fumes at the lack of options. But Atlas sees a silver lining. Perfect. That means we get to avenge Atlas. Elsewhere, CP0 assesses the Frontier Dome's might. Even with the Seraphim under their control, the tech-shielding Egghead is a formidable obstacle. Shaka and Edison are deep in conversation. Each satellite weighs their duty. Despite their disagreements, all agree. The safety of the main body, Vegapunk Stella, comes first. Even if that means sacrificing themselves. That goody-good act of yours really gets on my nerves. Lilith barks at Edison, already itching for a fight. Shaka proposes calling in a mysterious ally, someone still on the island. Calling them in would be risky, but when has that ever stopped Vegapunk? Vegapunk still called the secret ally to help him escape. Of course, the person on the other end responds. I've always been prepared for this order. Inside the lab, with the Vega Force 01 prepped, Vegapunk prepares to depart with all 6 satellites. The Straw Hats are shocked, 7 scientists tagging along. Frankie, excited, calls it the ultimate voyage. 7 faces of the world's greatest brain. Sanji, of course, is just glad Lilith's coming. Suddenly, Bonney charges through the lab, rage blazing in her eyes. She's furious. Vegapunk used bugs on her, and that is absolutely unacceptable. That's what you're mad about? Someone cries out, bewildered. Bonney shouts that she has to keep her promise to get the old man out alive. But no one notices the alarm blaring. Something is happening. The Frontier Dome defenses are suddenly offline. Panic ripples through the lab. How? The security systems were just working. No one is in the control room, someone yells. It might be a trap, Lucci says with narrowed eyes, instantly sensing something off. Stussy quietly notes the malfunction is a little too convenient. With the barriers down, this might be the opportunity they've been waiting for. Lucci stares up toward the dome. The heavens have abandoned you, Vegapunk. He orders the final strike. Just above the island, the Thousand Sunny is parked, and the enemy sees it. With all other ships destroyed, it's clear. This vessel is the Vegapunk's only escape route. Sky Slicer. Kaku launches a Tempest kick down toward the Sunny with lethal intent. But just as the slash closes in, clang, a sword meets the attack. Zoro blocks it mid-air with one blade, standing at the edge of the ship, having just woken from his nap. Who the hell interrupted my nap? Kaku's eyes widen in disbelief. Rorinoa. Elsewhere in the lab, Bonney wasn't interested in waiting. She charged at Vegapunk, fury in her eyes and a massive weapon in hand. He stumbled back, clearly overwhelmed, stammering for a moment to explain, but she wasn't in the mood for lectures. She needed one thing only. Could he turn her father back to normal? Vegapunk flinched at the question, sweat pouring down his panicked face. He wanted to, but something held him back. As Bonney loomed over him, weapon raised, he cried out that he couldn't, not because he didn't want to, but because there was a reason he clearly wasn't ready to share just yet. Far from Egghead, out in the waters of the New World, a powerful current carried a ship through unknown seas. A massive fish swam beneath them, drawing off from the crew. On deck, Killer nudged Kid awake. They were nearing land. Excitement buzzed among the crew. No one ever accused Eustace Kid of passing up an island, especially not a new one. They debated exploring, though some among them hesitated. One warned this place wasn't ordinary. Kid's eyes lit up as realization dawned. The island ahead, it wasn't just any landmass. It was Elbaf, the homeland of giants. His smirk widened, eyes gleaming with ambition. Of course, he wanted to explore it. Elbaf, his crew echoed in disbelief. Elbaf, he shouted again, voice ringing with the fire of conquest. Meanwhile, across the sea, at the imposing towers of the G-14 naval base, a panic unfolded. Vice Admiral Garp's ship had arrived, and that alone turned heads. Helmeppo came running, emotional and desperate. Kobe had been captured by Blackbeard. He had begged for help, but nothing had come. He couldn't do a thing on his own. His voice cracked, eyes wide and trembling. Even some of the Marines couldn't hold back their tears. The thought of Kobe's suffering stirred even hardened veterans. And then came the voice that could shatter mountains with pure authority. Garp had arrived. Without waiting for clearance or explanation, he barked out orders with a booming laugh. He wasn't here for politics. He was here to smash in Blackbeard's front door and drag Kobe out himself. Dahl, another vice admiral, stared at him in disbelief. Was he seriously launching an offensive against an emperor of the sea without top brass approval? Garp just laughed it off. Don't be like that, Dahl. Wahaha, this isn't a joke. But Dahl stood firm, warning him again that this was no ordinary mission. Garp grinned wider, dismissing her concerns. She pressed further, demanding to know whether he'd coordinated with anyone. Garp's ship was ready to launch. His words thundered like cannon fire across the sea breeze. Let's beat the snot out of those pirates and save Captain Kobe. The moment the attack launched, the air itself seemed to twist, as if the very fabric of time had warped. Bonney lunged forward in her transformed, distorted future form, a weapon of swirling momentum and rage. Vegapunk, utterly stunned, could barely manage a breath before she crashed into him, sending him flying. He screamed in terror, limbs flailing, tongue out, eyes bulging, like a cartoon scientist caught in a nightmare. Her fist struck hard, slamming him into the metal wall with a force that shattered debris around them. Smoke and steam spiraled around their forms. Bonney's shout of "URA" echoed with fury, while Vegapunk crumpled helplessly beneath the blow. A beat passed, and then she declared coldly that this was goodbye. The old man's eyes widened in shock as her silhouette turned away, walking into what she believed was the afterlife of their shared history. But Vegapunk, mortified and desperate, shouted her name. A thin, childlike version of himself collapsed onto the ground, stabbed and warped. Bonney's power had physically regressed him into a helpless child again. "These shiny objects are my age," he gasped, stumbling around amid glowing stars, his thoughts swirling with chaos. Bonney panted, still trying to regain control, sweat pouring down her brow. She wasn't just angry. Vegapunk shouted, "Return my shining year pieces," he cried. "I've become a helpless child." Bonney tried to explain. Her power didn't permanently affect living things. He would recover, but his panic made it clear how far this confrontation had spiraled. She cornered him, demanding answers. Why did he kill her father? Why had he stripped Kuma of his humanity? Vegapunk hesitated. Pain clouded his face. "If I tell you the reason, you'll only end up getting hurt." That only fueled Bonney's rage. With each plea for patience, she pushed harder. Meanwhile, across the sea, the figure of Bartholomew Kuma had begun an impossible climb, up the towering red line itself. Marines stared in disbelief, shouting that there was no way he'd reach the top. Yet he climbed, one hand after another, determined. Back in the lab, Vegapunk's voice cracked. He had promised never to tell. He had made a vow to Kuma, and Kuma had willingly chosen to discard his humanity. Bonney couldn't believe it. "Stop lying!" she screamed, her tears boiling into fury. She refused to accept that her father had left her by choice. To her, Vegapunk was still the man who had killed him. Vegapunk shouted, a haunted look in his eyes. "It was painful for me too," he admitted. "It's painful to even think about." Bonney didn't buy it. She leapt at him, fists clenched, fury unchained. Vegapunk insisted that Kuma had been an honorable man, a friend. Because he respected him, he couldn't betray that trust. Bonney screamed, "Just say it. Do you think I'll just take your word for it?" Vegapunk crying, "This is torture." And then a strange energy pulsed through the air. Bonney's eyes widened. She had felt something calling to her. She sprinted away, past a stunned Vegapunk, despite him arguing it has nothing to do with Kuma, toward a sealed chamber. The control panel buzzed as she slammed a switch-marked oil shock. She pushed through the heavy security doors, panting, trembling, sweating. Her eyes locked onto a giant paw-shaped bubble in the center of the room. Huffing, she whispered to herself, "There's no way it doesn't exist." Her expression tightened. Whatever it was, it had to be related to her father. Then came the flashback. Vegapunk, younger and excited, once spoke with Kuma about the soul. He shared a theory. When a human dies, 21 grams of mass is lost, proof of the soul's existence. Kuma, somber yet open, sat across from him. Vegapunk rambled, pondering memories, nerves, radio waves, and then posed a challenge. If Kuma's powers could materialize pain, could he not also extract memories? He begged him, "Please, help. Science can take another step." But Kuma only looked away. This was no experiment. It was his life. Vegapunk pleaded, "Please, I beg you. No one else will look. I promise." But Kuma, fist clenched, asked, "Do you want to embarrass me?" The panel opens in a dark, sterile room where a mysterious bubble pulsates ominously. Dr. Vegapunk looks on in shock as Bonney approaches a round, bear-shaped sphere, a condensed mass of pain. He warns her not to touch it, alarm flashing across his face, insisting that it's enough to kill. But Bonney remains firm, confronting him. She knows Kuma's power. She understands what this orb really is. Vegapunk confirms it with hesitation. It's pain. The very essence of suffering expelled by Kuma's ability. Bonney refuses to back down. "That's my father's ability," she declares, her determination unshaken. Vegapunk, caught between dread and guilt, finally gives in. Very well. Meanwhile, a battle rages outside. Marines bark orders. Kuma must not reach Mary Geos. Shoot him down, they shout. Explosions erupt. A direct hit lands, sending smoke billowing as someone cries out, "We got him!" But it's not enough. Kuma's monstrous body reemerges from the smoke, still standing. He's still alive, one soldier exclaims in disbelief. Chaos breaks out. Hold him down. Finish him. Others shout for civilians to evacuate immediately. Panic sets in. Inside the lab, Bonney watches the memory orb, tears brimming in her eyes. This is my father's memories, isn't it? The heavy weight of Kuma's past starts to seep through the atmosphere. Cut to the Egghead Labophase. Zoro's still locked in battle. Lilith casually remarks, "Good thing Zoro is there. He won't lose." Shaka, ever the realist, reminds her that it's 2 versus 3, and everything depends on how they fight. But something isn't right. Vegapunk Edison breaks in, noting the system is having issues. "Rob Lucci." Nami gasps. Panic hits Usopp, while Shaka warns them to look closer. Zoro and Brook may actually be at a disadvantage. Suddenly, alarms blare. The Seraphim have landed. The elite prototypes, created with godlike power, descend upon the battlefield. The lab is surrounded. It's now 2 versus 7, and they're the strongest models yet. This is a terrible pinch, Edison declares. Lilith and others brace to move. S-Snake, S-Hawk, and S-Shark stomp forward. The group realizes these Seraphim are not supposed to move without CP0's orders. But no one ordered them. The dome is closed, so who activated them? The shocking truth dawns. The Seraphim have some autonomy. Decision-making protocols have been embedded into them. For situations just like this, they're assessing the battlefield and adapting. Vegapunk's authority system flashes. Only a select few can control the Seraphim. The Gorosei, Vegapunk himself, Sentomaru, and those with command chips. But right now, no one seems to be in command. Meanwhile, on the ship's exterior, Brook and Zoro stand ready. Brook recognizes the twisted figure before them, the giraffe from CP0. Kaku, but something's off. His transformation looks odd. Zoro confirms. It's the same thing that tore through those corpses earlier. Kaku's new form is grotesque, and now armed with a vicious technique. Rorinoa, he snarls, charging at Zoro with an explosive nose gun. But Zoro meets the assault head-on, sword drawn. Kaku unleashes a deadly spinning technique. Kiraman Jiwairo, obliterating the ground and everything in its path, but Zoro just calmly say about him fighting enough zigzagging monsters from Wano. "I'm tired of them," he yells. Elsewhere, the situation turns desperate. The Seraphim begin wreaking havoc. Lucci yells that they must destroy the Labophase before Vegapunk comes out. Vegapunk, Atlas warns, they'll destroy the lab. Panic rises as the lab is surrounded by massive Zododon explosions. Amid the madness, Stussy suddenly acts. Lucci frees as Kaku collapses from an unexpected bite. Not from an enemy, but from her. Lucci's eyes go wide. "What are you doing, Stussy?" "What am I doing?" she says innocently. "I just put him to sleep." She turns, smirking, and asks gently, "Please, Lucci, won't you go to sleep too?" She smirks suspiciously. Boom. Plot twist detonated. Elsewhere, a wide view showed Egghead engulfed in madness. Destruction everywhere, pillars of smoke choking the air, and chaos reigning. Inside the ruined lab, Stussy hovered near the unconscious CP0 agents. Her eyes narrowed as she muttered, "I don't believe this." Lucci, battered but rising, turned and spotted Kaku lying unconscious. His voice cracked as he screamed his partner's name. "Kaku!" Fury filled his veins. In a burst of rage, he lunged at Stussy with a vicious thrust. "If you won't accept it, should I kill you first?" But Stussy was already prepared. With flawless grace, she activated a secret technique, Kemi Unbroken Heart, Zanshin. Her body bent like silk in the wind, evading his strike with elegant precision. "Geez, you're so wild," she said playfully, retrieving a hidden weapon. Sea Prism Stone Lipstick. One quick application, and she was ready. Lucci barely had time to react before she lunged and bit him. Wapu! With vampire-like precision, she sank her fangs into his neck, draining his strength with alarming speed. His roar of defiance faded as his body gave way. Behind her, Lucci's rage echoed into silence. Wapu! Stussy stepped back, wings spread, calm as ever. I know you guys are strong, she said softly, so I'm not going to fight you head-on. Please forgive me. The shock rippled through the battlefield like a sudden storm. CP0 agents, usually a unified force of cold efficiency, now appeared to be fighting among themselves. Confusion gripped those watching from above as bodies hit the ground. Bonney stared in disbelief, struggling to understand the chaos unraveling below. Why is CP0 attacking CP0? Came the startled cry from someone off-panel, capturing the general sentiment. Zoro squinted from his vantage point, piecing things together. Something wasn't right. Are they split among themselves? He wondered aloud. Down below, it became clear Stussy had made her move. Her calm voice drifted out over the comms. With a serene smile, she revealed her handiwork. She had put both Lucci and Kaku to sleep. Their unconscious bodies sprawled out like discarded puppets. I put both of them to sleep, she admitted, as though she'd simply served them tea. Yurt clung to her snacking position, jaw agape. Amazing, she marveled. The other Vegapunks watched in varying states of shock. One of them asked the obvious, "Did you send your own spy into the intelligence agency?" Vegapunk Shaka offered a sheepish reply. He hadn't meant to do that, but that's just how it turned out. After all, Stussy had spent 2 decades undercover, maintaining her identity within CP0. And even now, after all that time in the shadows, she still remained an ally of Vegapunk. Well, what a surprise. The sentiment echoed among the group. Lilith, more startled than impressed, demanded answers. What's going on? Did Lucci get beaten up? Elsewhere, Stussy turned to the doctor, Vegapunk himself. Lucci and I have the same level of authority. I can't override his orders. I can't stop them. That revelation chilled the group. If Lucci had given orders to the Seraphim, then the living weapons would carry them out, unless someone of higher authority intervened. And none of them outranked Lucci. Pythagoras analyzed the situation grimly. If they didn't act fast, the Seraphim would corner them completely. Zoro and Brook raced to intercept the advancing figures. Zoro's eyes narrowed as he spotted the childlike warriors approaching. I feel like I've seen them before, he muttered, heart quickening. Brook echoed the dread. Same here, he gasped. Zoro focused in on one in particular. His instincts screamed danger. Especially him. His tone dropped low as his eyes locked onto the swordsman among them. From the far side of the battlefield, the sound of destruction boomed. Explosions ripped through the lab. Lilith cursed aloud. Damn it! They destroyed the lab. It was chaos all around. And yet, oddly enough, the path to the outside world had somehow grown easier to reach. A figure burst through into the open, breathing in freedom. Finally, I'm outside, she whispered with a grin. But the moment of peace didn't last. One of the Seraphim, Hawk, unsheathed his blade with a shing, signaling trouble. Hey you! Lilith snapped, attempting to intervene. But the Seraphim locked onto her. Zoro leapt in to block the first attack with fierce steel, blades clashing in a thunderous collision. His eyes darted across the opponent. The closer he looked, the more disturbing the resemblance became. The more I see some humanity in you. The Seraphim stared back with a glare of pure combat instinct. What the hell are you? Zoro snarled as their weapons screamed again in a violent clash. Nearby, Edison rushed into view. Seraphim, stop attacking. But the order came too late. The Seraphim were already mid-attack, launching a devastating blast to Edison. Edison! Lilith screamed in horror. The entire area erupted in smoke and energy. The Vegapunks and Straw Hats watched helplessly. Too late, the realization hit them like a hammer. Just as it seemed the worst had happened, Edison stirred. Zoro murmured, Sanji murmured as well. That's dangerous. Edison said nervously, stunned but still alive. Sanji holding Edison as they dropped down from his jump. Edison, Lilith sighed in relief. The Seraphim froze in place, order suspended at last. Still reeling from the commotion, Zoro and the crew demanded answers. What the hell are these? Explain, he barked, staring up at the massive, childlike Seraphim. Relief washed over the group as Study declared that she'd placed sea-stone restraints on both Lucci and Kaku. That power vacuum immediately gave the Vegapunks control again. Stussy received her next orders calmly. She was to leave the island with the others. Understood, she replied with cool composure. Nearby, Usopp grumbled that more people were being added to the escape party. But a more pressing matter emerged. Bonney had vanished, and with her, Dr. Vegapunk was nowhere to be found. Panic set in. Old man Punk, where did he go? Luffy shouted. A panel pulled away to the clouds surrounding Egghead, isolating the island in a quiet moment of foreboding. Words followed like an ominous prophecy. However, an event will occur, the disappearance of Dr. Vegapunk. Old Ma'an, Luffy's voice echoed out faintly. She refused to leave without Vegapunk. And then silence. The scene shifted thousands of miles away. Across the sea in the New World, at a quiet settlement on Sphinx Island, the hometown of the late pirate Whitebeard, tranquility returned after a terrible incident. Hey Marco, one villager called gently. Children nervously confessed what had happened. The Marines came, one cried. It was really scary, another sobbed. A third insisted he wasn't afraid, though the tears in his eyes betrayed him. Marco, looking burdened yet calm, apologized to them. My bad, guys. Sorry you had to go through all that. The flashback unfolded. A group of Marines, aggressive and unscrupulous, descended upon the island, treating the peaceful villagers like criminals. Stay still, and there won't be any casualties, they barked. The villagers protested. Their only crime was being born in Whitebeard's land. But the Marines weren't interested in fairness. Whitebeard's treasure has got to be here, they declared. This place isn't allied with the world government, one Marine sneered. Laws won't protect you here. You scum! A voice snapped as the villagers were threatened, even the elderly held at gunpoint. Parents clutched their children in panic. Maybe you'll tell us if we shoot each of you one at a time, one officer suggested darkly. Children wailed. The villagers screamed. A grandmother was nearly shot. Then, like a tidal wave, he arrived. Wah! Don't lay your hands on my hometown. A giant figure crashed down from above, scattering Marines like ragdolls. It was Weevil. Screaming with unfiltered rage, he crushed the attackers with terrifying ease. This is Dada's hometown, he bellowed. Marines reeled in horror. What? Weevil? Colonel Lattell screamed out orders, but it was too late. Weevil rampaged through them, protecting the land Whitebeard once called home. The townsfolk trembled with mixed emotions. A naval report rang out, calling from Sphinx. The former warlord Weevil has shown up. We need backup, another added. We couldn't even contact their military unit. They got defeated, a commanding officer shouted. Everyone, get back to the ships. We'll wait for more reinforcements. They didn't stand a chance. Just as we thought, his strength is monstrous. Back in the present, the villagers recalled how they were saved. If that huge guy hadn't come, our village would have been toast, one kid added. He really was a hero. I'm glad you're all safe, Marco said softly. But Marco, who do you think showed up right after that? An old lady asked. The scene shifted once more to a marine fleet preparing for action. Kizaru lounged with his usual relaxed demeanor as attendants handed him tea. Here's the tea and snacks, one said. Did you test them for poison? Kizaru asked sternly. Of course, came a quick reply. I'll deliver them. Stay back, Kizaru offered casually as he sipped his tea. Within the ship, an ominous presence loomed. Dr. Vegapunk. I see, Kizaru gave him a nod. Have you met each other? A darkened figure folded his hands and spoke in a low voice. A long time ago, just once. The camera panned upward, revealing a face etched in age, wisdom, and power. Saint J. Garcia Saturn, one of the 5 elder stars, glared forward beneath thick dreadlocks and horn-rimmed glasses. His voice oozed disdain. It is quite disappointing how things have become lately. The scene shifts back to Sphinx Island. A shrill voice rang out. The Navy Admiral Greenbull came here. I couldn't do anything. There she was, Miss Buckingham Stussy, a former member of the fearsome Rocks Pirates, a self-proclaimed scientist and mother to Weevil. Bring back my son, and hand over the inheritance of Whitebeard. She shrieked. The panel confirmed her identity as an MADS resident, real name Buckingham Stussy. Tears welled in her eyes. Weevil went to prison for protecting his father's village. He's such a stubborn child. He's truly Newgate's son and mine. Well, thanks a lot for protecting the village, Marco said to old lady Buckingham Stussy. Marco, surely you believe that Whitebeard and Weevil are blood-related, right? Her voice trembled now, not with rage, but desperation. There's one person that can prove it, and it's Dr. Vegapunk. Clouds of vapor hissed and whirred above the chaos of Egghead's Fabriostratum. A towering figure loomed through the smoke. PX-3041, a Mark III Pacifista. Marines recoiled in confusion and fury, demanding to know why a government weapon was standing in their way. Wasn't it supposed to be on their side? But there was no answer, only a cold, mechanical advance. One agent barked a threat, promising retaliation for the injuries inflicted on their men. Guns were raised, but they were too late. With a thunderous wham, the Pacifista's massive bubble shield extended like a crashing wave, flinging its attackers aside in a single, effortless sweep. The impact left them stunned, their eyes wide in disbelief. One agent gasped, asking aloud what sort of ability had just crushed their assault. Another stared at the shimmering surface of the shield, realization dawning in his voice. It was a bubble shield, the ultimate defense crafted by Vegapunk himself. PX-3041 stood firm, its booming voice emotionless. Resistance was futile. Surrender and proceed to Factory B. The sheer authority in its tone left no room for argument. Surrounded and outgunned, the agents complied, lowering their weapons as one of them cried out desperately. If they wanted to live, they'd better follow orders. Another group of agents recoiled in disbelief as a second Pacifista initiated capture protocols entirely on its own. That wasn't normal. Pacifistas weren't supposed to act independently like this. Someone, somewhere, was overriding their behavior. But who? In a nearby facility, Sentomaru huffed in frustration, her hulking form resting against a pillar as she grumbled about what was supposed to be a day off. Chaos swirled outside. Voices shouted questions about the Pacifistas. Were they functioning properly? Something definitely felt off. And despite multiple attempts, no one could get in touch with Vegapunk. Grandpa Punk had gone completely silent. Worse yet, the Frontier Dome was sealed shut, isolating the lab from the outside world. Sentomaru remembers Luffy promising, no matter what, he would get Vegapunk off this island. Inside his comm snail, signals buzzed persistently. The Navy was still trying to reach him, unaware he'd already turned traitor. He muttered that they didn't realize he was now a rebel, and frankly, it was unsettling. But none of it mattered anymore. He had made his choice. He issued a command. All 50 Mark III Pacifista units were to deploy. One by one, the dormant PX-3 units rose, their eyes glowing with power, rows upon rows of them standing at the ready. The command center buzzed with energy. Sentomaru, now free of hesitation, realized with grim clarity he could do whatever he wanted now. The units marched out, heavy metal feet thundering across the pavement. Civilians and scientists watched in awe as Sentomaru ordered them to guard the coast. The Navy might have more tricks up their sleeve, but he wasn't about to give them an inch. He turned to one Pacifista, Unit 033, and gave it a mission of utmost importance: ensure that Straw Hat Luffy and Dr. Vegapunk safely left the island. No matter what happened, their escape was top priority. Inside the containment area, restrained CP-0 agents screamed to be released, banging against the walls in vain. Meanwhile, the looming threat stirred heavy tension. Something big was going down on Egghead, and everyone could feel it. No matter what happens, Sentomaru warned, you must ensure your creator escapes. Back at the Labophase, Luffy and his crew stared up at Punk records. Luffy was in disbelief. Vegapunk wasn't there. He'd run all over the lab searching and was now collapsed on the floor, panting like a dog. Chopper squinted at his hover boots. Apparently, Luffy had wrecked them from all the running. Luffy scolded him not to snitch. He couldn't afford to pay them. Nearby, Shaka was monitoring the lab. Every corner was wired through din mushy snails, but something was off. Vegapunk wasn't showing up on any of the cameras. Bonney had also vanished. Shaka pointed to a monitor. She was right there the whole time. Luffy screamed, frustrated that no one told him sooner. The Straw Hats and Satellites regrouped, each dealing with the unsettling realization. The Stella, Vegapunk's original body, had completely disappeared. Brook, lounging as always, commented that the place was marvelous and had everything they needed. Stussy asking where the Stella body is. Zoro stood beside her, unimpressed, already sensing something foul in the air. As if that wasn't enough, control over the Frontier Dome had been lost. Escape was now off the table unless they could repair it. Any attempt would likely end with them getting fried by automated lasers. Shaka relayed what little they knew. Tracking Stella was their top priority now. Up in the control room, Shaka scanned through lab displays. The Seraphim rampage earlier had likely knocked many of the monitor snails out of position. Pythagoras radioed in. The third floor of C Tower was empty. Shaka instructed him to check the next spot, then paused. Meanwhile, Nami offered to help search the lab, for treasure too, of course. Brook floated in beside her, ready to tag along. Stussy was especially concerned. Finding Stella had become a race against time. As the team split up once more, the hunt for Vegapunk truly began. Zoro offered to lend a hand in the hunt for a sawed-off headed geezer. Sanji immediately lunged, grabbing him by the collar, yelling that Zoro getting lost would only make things worse. Chopper and Robin chimed in, trying to coax Zoro to sit this one out, just for once, and stay put. Zoro, of course, said nothing, just brooded in silence while Robin smiled gently beside him. Zoro was already getting restless. The idea of letting others do the searching while he stayed behind didn't sit right with him. He looked on, grumbled that it was a pain, but since the others were just organizing a search, they'd probably be fine. Next scene shows Luffy had finally collapsed from exhaustion beside Zoro, tongue hanging out dramatically as he gasped for breath. Zoro looked at him with a sigh, remarking that he must have been running full throttle again. Luffy, still catching his breath, croaked that he always went all out. The group couldn't believe they'd run into the CP agents again, their unconscious bodies piled nearby. Deeper inside the lab, in the paw room, Bonney approached the massive, glowing bubble of compressed memory, Kuma's essence. As she reached out to touch it, the others behind her panicked, shouting for her to stop, to get away from it. She ignored them, and then she was inside. Bonney stood in a hazy, dreamlike field as sobs echoed through the wind. Ahead of her, a child hunched over in anguish. She approached slowly, calling out. The boy was crying, trembling, barely able to speak through his panic. When she got close enough to see his face, her eyes widened in recognition. It was Kuma. As a child, tears streamed down his cheeks. He was sobbing uncontrollably. Wait, Daddy. But there was no time to think. The voices were closing in. Dark silhouettes loomed behind him, shouting at him to get back. If he didn't, they'd kill the rest. One barked that crying wouldn't help. Another lifted a club to strike. Kuma wailed that going back meant death anyway. He begged them to kill him instead. Anything but going back. He was calling out for help. Someone save me. I can't take it anymore. Voices screamed at him to return, threatening death if he tried to escape again. Bonnie's heart pounded in her chest as she saw the terrified child plead for his life. Bonney screamed for them to stop. Please stop. Save me, it hurts. I'm sorry, help me. She trembled. The pain was overwhelming, not hers, but his. A childhood that had known only torment and despair. Outside the memory, Bonney was hurled backward, her body tossed across the room from the force of the bubble's rejection. Gasping for breath, she looked shaken to the core. The experience had drained her, but she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Images flashed through her mind. Kuma's suffering, the abuse, the beatings, the unrelenting cries for mercy. And above it all, the searing question that haunted her. Why? Bartholomew Kuma was still climbing the red line in the present, his battered body pushing upward like a ghost on a mission. Marines watching below screamed in panic, "Shoot him down!" But Kuma was undeterred, driven by something no one else could see. Bonney wiped her face, still sitting near the bubble. She'd barely scratched the surface of his pain. Her heart ached as she admitted it. Her resolve hadn't been strong enough. She hadn't been able to take it all in. "If I stay ignorant, I'll never understand, right, Dad?" She glanced back at the glowing bubble, shimmering ominously as she reaches out her hand. Elsewhere on Egghead, Pythagoras walked through the trash facility. The chaos of the recent attacks had left the lab in ruins. He muttered about how they destroyed the place. Even though it was where they were born, he was referring to the Seraphims. The destruction was everywhere. Mechanical debris, torn panels, sparking wires. Punk records loomed ahead like a sleeping god. Clink, clank, clink. "Stella, where the blazes did you get to?" In the distance, Pythagoras's head perked up, reacting to the sound. His mechanical eyes scanned the dark corridor at the back, footsteps echoing. And then, boom! A powerful blast rocked the lab. Debris exploded outward in a shockwave. High above the sky, floating aboard the quirky airborne ship of the World Economic News, Morgans cackled with glee. A massive din mushy echoed his announcement. An insane scoop had just landed in his lap. The world government was planning to assassinate Dr. Vegapunk, the beloved genius known across the world. Morgans waved his wings like a conductor commanding the truth itself. The people loved Vegapunk. He brought them power, energy, and progress. Killing him would be a PR disaster. But Morgans already had a solution. Spin it, call it what it needed to be called. Down below, his crew confirmed the headline. Navy skirmish at Egghead. Emperor Straw Hat Luffy takes Vegapunk hostage. And just like that, the new narrative was born. Suddenly, Morgans was interrupted, not by a rival reporter, but by two very familiar stowaways. Wapple, the comically unhinged former king of Evil Black Drum, yelled for her to keep her voice down. What if there was a wiretap snail? The government would erase them. And besides, Morgans had taken him in. Wapple continued to squawk about paranoia while Vivi brushed off his antics, sitting like royalty despite her fugitive status. Yes, Nefertari Vivi, Princess of Arabasta, was alive. She corrected Morgans, her tone sharp. Luffy would never do something like that. Off-panel, someone squealed in delight that Vivi borrowed their clothes and vowed never to wash them again. Morgans, smug as ever, flapped his wings and said that his words could shake the world. News isn't about fact or fiction. It's about entertainment. He dickle-read. Public spin was everything. Facts were secondary. The truth didn't matter. Only how information flies. The air was thick with smoke and the sting of scorched metal in the aftermath of the explosion near Punk Records. Through the hazy chaos, voices crackled over transceivers as Shaka tried to reach his fellow satellite. "Come in, Pythagoras. Do you read me?" But the silence on the other end was deafening. A thick plume rose from the damaged tower, while surveillance snails blinked, scanning the scene. Shaka barked orders. Building C, Snail 12, sweep the area immediately. Was it an accident? Was Pythagoras caught in the blast? The response never came. On screen, one of the snails caught movement. A faint shadow slinked past the rubble. What was that shadow? And then, boom! Another explosion ripped through the corridor. The visual feed went static. Monitors fizzled out one by one. The din mushy monitoring the sector screeched and shuddered before going dark. Shaka stared wide-eyed as connection after connection dropped. The lab was being cut off. Luffy stood up. Something fell off. Beside him, Zoro asked what's up. Luffy asked Shaka if there is something wrong with the radio as all their voices cut out. On the third floor of Building A, Voices echoed through the hall. "Where are you, Vegapunk?" Nami and Brook had split off, now exploring a chamber filled with crystalline treasures. Nami's eyes sparkled as she gushed over a trove of precious gems inside a display case. "Gimme, gimme, gimme." Edison commented on her enthusiasm. Wasn't she being a bit forward? She didn't care. They were supposed to be searching for Stella, but Nami casually mentioned they could come back later, after the rescue. Edison's mechanical voice clarified that they were synthetic and meant for industrial use. Still, Nami refused to hide her sparkle-eyed wonder. The future, it seemed, was full of dreams and diamonds. Meanwhile, on the second floor of Building A Atlas, Robin and Chopper examine a room full of man-made biological components, organs floating in tanks, labeled and preserved. Atlas boasted that she could replace any part of her body at will. Her head? Just a mask. Her limbs? Modular. Atlas smirked. "That's the future for you." Robin inspected the strange sacks of tissue curiously. "Were these Vegapunk's actual organs?" Atlas reassured her. These were organoids, synthetic replacements for medical use. Chopper was absolutely fascinated. "You can grow new organs? That's amazing." But just then, Shaka's voice crackled into the receiver. He was calling Edison. Something wasn't right. In the command room, Building A's fourth floor, Luffy and Shaka examined the control panel. Luffy frantically swore that he hadn't broken anything, even though the camera feeds were now dying one by one. Shaka wasn't blaming him. It wasn't a technical error. Someone was disabling the cameras on purpose. The monitors blacked out one after another, until the room fell into a still silence. Shaka and Usopp stood frozen, staring at the darkened control panel. Then came the realization. There's someone else in the lab. In Building B, second floor, Stussy walked confidently ahead. Behind her trailed Jinbei, solemn and alert, while Sanji, utterly useless in the face of beauty, fawned over her. He gushed about traveling with Lady Stussy and practically proposed on the spot. He said he could be her loyal dog. Stussy, ever calm, teased him sweetly to just look out for the Stella. Jinbei commented that this part of the lab is huge. Stussy replied that because they were on the weapons development floor, a single misstep could trigger a massive explosion. In Building C, third floor, York, Frankie, Usopp, and Lilith marched through smoke and rubble. Lilith explained a new weapon, a bubble gun, capable of reflecting any attack. Frankie asked, "What kind of weapon just bounces attacks back?" As they turned a corner, they froze. Smoke still curled upward. Rubble littered the floor. There was someone there. Usopp and the others gasped as the figure came into view, a large, rounded body, mechanical limbs twitching. It was Pythagoras, but his head was gone. They rushed over in alarm. "Hang in there." But the body was limp. His head had been blown clean off. Robin covered her mouth at the sight. That blast earlier, it must have been from this. Just then, a rustle. A small figure hovered into view. It was Pythagoras, or more accurately, his disembodied head. Everyone whipped around, startled as he shouted for them not to shoot. His voice quivered as he explained what he saw. Something impossible. He stammered. It couldn't be real. But he knew his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. Pythagoras narrowed his gaze. This wasn't just some mechanical failure. It looked like an intentional assault. Pythagoras tried to recount what he witnessed, when York, lounging comfortably nearby, cut in with her usual flirty charm, completely missing the gravity of the situation. But her absence made something click. Everyone turned. Pythagoras blinked. "Where's York?" York, as clueless as ever, sauntered up to the little girl in front of her, the Seraphim clone of Boa Hancock with a sweet smile and zero sense of danger. Lilith shouted too late. "York, get away from her!" Before anyone could stop her, Hancock's Seraphim released a devastating technique. "Love, love, mellow." York turned to stone mid-step, her expression frozen in blissful ignorance. Panic exploded among the group. Usopp and Frankie watched in horror. Pythagoras cried out, "She got her!" As Snake stepped forward coldly, and without hesitation, kicked York's petrified form as it fell down. The Seraphim advanced. But the Seraphim didn't listen. Lilith's voice rang with disbelief. What? A Seraphim? Why are you here? Pythagoras was stunned. You shouldn't be able to move on your own. I command you to stop. As if in answer, S-Snake calmly formed a finger cross and blasted another massive energy beam toward them. The entire hallway exploded in a wave of destruction. Kaboom! Smoke and debris scattered as the Vegapunks and Straw Hats were blown back. Edison's voice cried out over the chaos. They're not listening to our orders. Lilith rolled mid-air, shielding her face, stunned by the force. They don't realize we're Vegapunk? Pythagoras shouted back. I know. They're ignoring us. They hit the ground hard. All of them. Elsewhere, the second wave of confusion exploded across the facility. Shaka, trying desperately to call the others, received no response. Shaka, respond. Shaka. The connection was dead. They were being isolated. In the smoke-filled aftermath, Frankie looked around in disbelief, tried to make sense of the situation. Didn't see this twist coming. Should I return fire? Frankie, now more alert than ever, muttered, That little girl's. Lilith trying to call Shaka, but it's not working. Her face was grim. She couldn't believe it. S-Snake had gone rogue. We won't stand a chance in a fight. We designed them to be the most powerful beings around. Back in the control room of building, Luffy huffed as he and Shaka rushed back to Zoro. Zoro had drawn his swords, his instinct already guiding him toward the threat. Give me a hand, Luffy, Luffy shouted back. What's up, Zoro? Zoro didn't waste time. In the middle of the lab, S-Hawk and S-Bear were already advancing, weapons primed, eyes glowing. Their massive forms cast looming shadows over the room. Shaka shouted desperately. S-Hawk, S-Bear, stop this immediately. Who ordered you to move? No response. The Seraphim stared forward, utterly silent, then attacked. Zoro lunged in to intercept. They were gunning for CP0. Letting them die in cuffs would leave a bad taste in my mouth. The room exploded in chaos again as Luffy and Zoro engaged the Seraphim head-on. The Seraphim fired again, another devastating beam slicing through the battlefield. Rubble and machines were launched through the air. They're not listening. Luffy yelled. Zoro looked over, breathing heavily. If they won't take my orders, then they must already be acting. Shaka's voice dropped. On a command issued by a Vegapunk. Luffy shouted, What? Shaka pieced it together aloud. The camera blackouts, the communications failure, the barrier trapping them in all happening at once. It's beginning to seem like an elaborate plan, and the barriers sealing us in between the comms blackout and the Seraphim acting without orders. Shaka's mind raced. Somebody's trying to kill us all. Luffy shouted even louder. WHAT? The battle escalated. Explosions burst across the lab as CP0's Lucci and Kaku, still in their sea-stone cuffs, stared on in disbelief. They want us dead? Those no-good Seraphim scamps. Kaku shouted across to Luffy and Zoro. Hey, Straw Hat, Roronoa, how about we let bygones be bygones for now? Lucci nodded, bloodied but upright. We could form a temporary alliance. The two of us would be much more useful out of these cuffs. Zoro and Luffy grimaced at the thought. They looked disgusted. Within the rubble-strewn chaos of the lab, the air was thick with mistrust. Luffy and Zoro stood before Lucci and Kaku, who remained bound behind bars. Their expressions were unreadable, yet tension simmered between them like a fuse waiting to be lit. Zoro's voice broke the silence. Calm and analytical, he proposed the unthinkable. What if they released the CP0 agents? But Zoro, ever the realist, scoffed at the idea. He couldn't see them willingly putting on cuffs again afterward. Kaku offered a rebuttal, insisting that once the danger passed, he wouldn't resist being restrained again, but his tone didn't help his credibility. Luffy, with his usual grin, shrugged and agreed anyway. Of course he did. He's obviously lying. Zoro shrieked, practically spitting in frustration. But things were escalating. The enemy presence pressed and fast. Suddenly, the room erupted. A massive slash tore through the wall, throwing bodies in every direction. The Seraphim were attacking again, one of them wielding blades eerily familiar. S-Hawk lunged forward, slicing through the battlefield with a fearsome edge. Zoro's eyes went wide. That attack was unmistakable. The power of the dice fruit. Zoro reacted instantly, parrying the deadly attack mid-air. Flames danced at the Seraphim's back, giving it the illusion of invincibility. Zoro's blade rang out as he blocked again, snarling with effort. Meanwhile, Shaka coldly turned toward the restrained assassins and demanded answers. What was their true mission? Rob Lucci didn't hesitate. His eyes locked forward as he declared the chilling truth. The government's goal was to eliminate all 7 Vegapunks. Lucci Kaku barked in panic, but the cat was out of the bag. Shaka pressed further. Did that mean they intended to deal with Stussy too, for her betrayal? Lucci's response was ice cold. He had no intention of sparing her, not even for a moment. That's right. I won't show her any mercy. Are you trying to convince them not to save us? Kaku screeched, panic now fully evident. But Shaka ignored the moral circus. He tossed the key to the cuffs toward Luffy, entrusting the decision to the Straw Hat Captain. Just protect the Stella at all costs. As the key soared through the air, Luffy caught it with ease. Chaos loomed, but there was no hesitation in his voice. Luffy fixed his gaze on Lucci. He asked one thing. That Lucci promise not to target his friends or the Vegapunks if they were freed. Zoro facepalmed. You idiot. These guys won't fall for a taunt like the... Snap. Lucci didn't blink. He promised that after the Straw Hat was dealt with, the rest wouldn't live long either. He took the bait. Zoro groaned, watching the traps spring around him. But before they could regroup, S-Bear unleashed a devastating pressure blast, the Ursus shock. The moment the restraints hit the ground, the battlefield exploded. Luffy and Lucci both launched into action. Luffy transformed into Gear 4th, while Lucci unleashed Six King Gun, aiming straight for S-Bear. Zoro simultaneously went on the offensive with Purgatory Onajurai, his blades glinting with deadly focus. Kaku wasn't far behind, kicking forward with Tempest Kick, White Thunder targeting S-Hawk. This wasn't a team-up. This was mutual survival. At the same time, deep within the mysterious lower levels of the lab, a grim sight lingered in the shadows. A massive containment chamber held dozens of figures collapsed in exhaustion. These were World Government Intelligence agents, CP-5, CP-7, CP-8, all presumed missing. It had been over 2 months since they'd eaten a proper meal. Many of them barely had the strength to sit up. They'd been sent here to investigate and never returned. One of them, gaunt and broken, recalled how they'd inspected Egghead Island. But before they could report back, weaponized sea beasts had attacked, dragging them back to the lab where they were locked up, silenced. Their only conclusion? Vegapunk was behind it all. But Dr. Vegapunk himself sat stunned and looking injured as well. The old genius stared blankly, his legs splayed out cartoonishly beneath him and with a handcuff with chains on his left hand. He had no idea any of this was happening on his own island. How troubling. He muttered that a leak of their Poneglyph research to the world government shouldn't have been possible, not unless someone had infiltrated them from within. The affair, from the start, had been baffling. And just beyond the horizon, a storm was coming. The final scene panned to the open sea. Over 100 Navy ships of all sizes, led by a massive fleet deployed from G9, now hurtled toward Egghead Island. Their destination was clear. Their mission ominous. All heading for Egghead. Far from the chaos of Egghead, the scene shifts to a small port on a certain island in the New World. A peaceful-looking bar sat near the water, its interior alive with drink, laughter, and ambition. A young wannabe pirate kid pleaded to be taken along. Take me with you. Come on. A man shown in black silhouette drinking said he wouldn't bring a hot-headed kid. The bartender, a smiling woman with kind eyes, laughed and teased him to give it up before the other captains grew jealous. But his admiration was no joke. He idolized the man he spoke of. That chief was a legend, pouting like a child. I really look up to the chief, he declared with fire in his heart. At that very moment, Commotion erupted outside. One of the crewmates burst into the bar. "Boss, that bastard's actually attacking us." Swords were drawn. Boots thundered against wooden floors. Outside, panic spread fast. "They've only been scraping with our youngsters so far, but it looks like this is about to blow into a full battle." A calm voice rose among the clamor. Cool, steady, with a smile on its lips. Shanks. He stood near a table of fruit and drinks, catching up with old friends, including Dory and Broggy of the giant warrior pirates. It had been years, long enough that he lost track of time. And now, the unexpected had arrived. Can't be helped when you suddenly come across old friends you thought were dead. With a gentle hand on his sword, Shanks acknowledged the incoming storm. "Let's set sail." The entire tavern roared to life. The kid said, "You're going out there to fight." "Shanks, I'd never let this island become a war zone," Shanks added warmly. But behind those words, a battle-ready storm was brewing. One of the bartenders swooned. "Oh, he's so dreamy." Shanks turned toward the towering silhouettes of Dory and Broggy. "Hey, mind giving me a hand?" The giants grinned. Then came the rally cry. Shanks and his crew marched forward. His allies, including Titanic warriors and infamous pirate veterans, raised their arms, their war cries echoing through the air. "GGY, GY, GY. Let's do it, red hair." Shanks gave one command. Before that, "Rockstar, can you check something for me?" The red-haired pirate extended a message. "You have a message for Captain Kidd?" The warning was simple. He has a choice. He can either hand over his road poneglyph rubbings and scram, or he can risk fighting me. Back on the approaching fleet, Eustace Kidd and his crew gazed grimly at the incoming threat. Ships, dozens of them, filled the horizon. They were all flying Red Hair's mark. Allies, veterans, warriors sworn to the Emperor. Killer pointed out what everyone was thinking. They're all big shots, and they're all with him. Kidd stared at the enemy fleet silently. His mind drifted back to the last time he challenged Shanks. It was a massacre. They hadn't even gotten a glimpse of the Emperor himself. "They took your arm before we even got a glimpse of Red Hair." The memories stung, but Kidd clenched his metallic fist, burning with rage and pride. This time will be different. On the island of Elbaf, the locals swarmed the returning Red Hair pirates. "Chief, Beckman, you're back." They adored Shanks. Some of them jokingly asked for protection money. Others simply cheered. But the warning had already reached Kidd. They won't settle for an arm this time. They'll take your life instead. And as the chapter closed, Eustace Kidd gave one final, resolute line, face deadly serious. "Ha ha ha. Only if I lose." The alarm rang loud and clear through the Fabrio stratum of Egghead, but it was Sentomaru's grim voice that truly jolted the air. Sitting down the floor and back against a wall, he barked a desperate command to the Vegapunk satellites. They needed to get off the island. The urgency in his voice was sharp, unmistakable. Confused stares met his plea. Why the sudden deployment of the Pacifistas? What was going on? The others surrounded him, demanding answers. But Sentomaru didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into the past, a chilling reminder. He spoke of a place called O'Hara, an island once rich with knowledge, wiped clean from the world simply because its people defied the world government. Gasps echoed. The horror of the O'Hara incident was no myth. Sentomaru's words cut deep as he recalled how the island, home to the largest library in the world and brave scholars who dared to study the poneglyphs, was mercilessly obliterated. The Navy was sent to exterminate everyone, scholars, civilians, children. No one was spared. They're willing to erase the world's greatest mind over this, Sentomaru warned with clenched teeth. The fact that the government was targeting Vegapunk, Grandpa Punk, meant they were deadly serious. And now, something even more catastrophic was coming. The skies darkened with foreboding as Sentomaru looked toward the heavens. Whatever weapon was inbound, this island would be the ground zero. Elsewhere, chaos erupted on the control room's fourth floor. Explosions blasted through walls as Luffy, Lucci, and Kaku fought in perfect sync. Huffing and scuffed from battle, They still pressed forward with relentless energy. Luffy's fists blurred as he unleashed his Kong organ barrage while Lucci's handgun Yellow Lotus crashed into S-Bear simultaneously. Their double assault smashed into a Seraphim, combining brute force with pinpoint coordination. "Take that!" Luffy roared, as the impact sent tremors across the battlefield. On another front, Zoro and Kaku is teaming up against S-Hawk. The two moved with deadly speed, trading attacks in a blur of sword slashes and shockwaves. Kaku released his multiple attack Tempest Kick onslaught to S-Hawk, all hitting their target. Zoro's blade flashed through the air as his eyes narrowed on his opponent as he drew in a stance of calm rage. One sword style, Ai, lethal lion's song. The air split as Zoro's technique struck with thunderous force, echoing across the lab like a lion's roar. The clone was hit, but still rose. TH4 regrouped at the center of the control room, watching the Seraphims rise again. Dust and smoke cleared only to reveal them standing, seemingly unfazed. "What the heck?" Luffy exclaimed, stunned. The others frustrated, but silent. "They're getting up way too easily. Do they think they're Kaido or something?" Luffy followed up. Zoro's eyes narrowed, mind tracing back to Wano. The thought clicked. The way the Seraphims moved, that black flame on their backs, the invincibility, the features, they remind me of King, Zoro muttered aloud. Shaka's attention perked up. Zoro then confirmed. He'd fought someone like this before. That guy in Wano, a Lunarian on Kaido's crew, asked Shaka. Realization rippled through the group. The flames, the durability, it all made sense. Shaka, ever quick, understood immediately. Then, that explains their invincibility. The pieces finally aligned. Lunarian blood coursed through these beings. They were modeled on Albert, King himself, Kaido's top commander. The Seraphim's toughness came from that heritage. Zoro's sharp, I moved to the fire, still burning on the Seraphim's backs. Pay attention to the flames. Our attacks will only work when they go out. Zoro scratched his head, unfazed. Yeah, well, there wasn't much to go off of. White hair, brown skin, black wings, flames, that's all King had. You should have put it together sooner. Luffy shrieked in unison, their faces contorted in over-the-top exasperation. Classic Zoro, brilliant under pressure, just on a 5-minute delay. Amid the havoc, Shaka turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Luffy called out. Shaka responded with certainty. "I think I may know where Stella's been taken." He pushed forward with resolve. Zoro rushed in to shield Shaka from S-Hawk's attack. At the 3rd floor of Building A, Nami charged into combat as well, Zeus crackling at the ready. "We can't treat him like a kid," Nami snapped, knowing full well the danger ahead. "Yeah, let's go Zeus," she shouted. The living thundercloud obeyed, fired up. Together, they launched forward, striking with blazing electricity and sheer determination. "One of our friends has already been ambushed, and Edison's totaled," Nami said through clenched teeth. "He's a heartless killing machine." Zeus volunteered without hesitation. "Don't hesitate, Nami." She heard Usopp shout in support. "Close your eyes if you have to. Just throw me, Nami. I'll take care of it." Nami took aim at S-Shark. Thunderbolt. The bolts surged through the chamber like a wrathful god scream, striking their opponent with pure judgment. Cute or not, never mess with a woman's crewmate and expect mercy. As the blast of Zeus' Thunderbolt faded, the lab still crackled with tension. But Brook realized that S-Shark did not fell down from the attack, but actually dove because of the splash sound. He shouted, "Nami-san, run! He's coming from below." Nami and Zeus was so surprised as she looked back to see S-Shark jumping out from the floor and was ready to hit her. Nami can only cover her face to brace herself from the attack. Brook was already in the middle of his attack to try stop the Seraphim, but he stopped when he heard a familiar voice rattling off his own decrees. The voice said that if he ever ruled a nation, anyone who dared threaten Nami would face capital punishment, and if anyone who makes her scream will receive a rare fillet strike. Suddenly, Sanji shot toward S-Shark like a flaming meteor, slamming his heel into the clone's chest. The Seraphim reeled. Honestly, That might be the most reasonable royal decree in all of One Piece. You won't get another warning, small fry. Sanji barked as he shielded Nami, whose soft voice called out his name with a worried Sanji-kun. Nami, still recovering, looked up in awe. But Sanji wasn't done. "I'll be your judge, jury, and executioner," he snarled, breathing heavily. It didn't matter if this enemy looked like a child or resembled Jinbei. He had crossed the line. Meanwhile, another battle escalated across Egghead. On the third floor of Building C, Lilith exploded with fury. Her voice rang with righteous anger. "How dare you petrify York?" Facing off against S-Snake, Lilith unleashed her bubble gun, firing orbs of liquid energy infused with oceanic power. One of the bubbles managed to graze S-Snake. Whoa! She just brushed it off like it was Noth. Usopp gasped from the sidelines, but suddenly S-Snake fell down. Usopp and S-Snake were both confused as to what happened. Lilith had a scientist's insight and a warrior's confidence. Green blood gives you the pros and cons of fruit powers, she explained as her cannon charged again. And these bubbles are made from the ocean's energy. They're your weak point. Frankie sprang into action. "I'll catch her while she's down," he shouted. But the victory was short-lived. S-Snake recovered shockingly fast. S-Snake snapped back with vicious speed, lashing out with a kick. Frankie was sent flying as the battle reignited. Frankie with a frustrated sigh. "It's already worn off. Guess it only grazed her," Lilith muttered wide-eyed. S-Snake, looking annoyed, shot them a laser beam that made a big explosion which hurled Usopp and Lilith in opposite directions. Suddenly Frankie ran towards S-Snake from the back, hurling a big bubble. "Take that!" he yelled as he pinned S-Snake down using the big bubble. The others rallied. "You're a genius, Frankie," Usopp called, impressed. "You used that bubble perfectly." Lilith followed up, but S-Snake wasn't out yet. She let out a cute face with tears falling down her cheeks while saying it's agonizing. Too cute struck. Frankie was taken aback, saying sorry. He also accidentally released the bubble, freeing S-Snake. She then struck with Perfume Femur, a flying kick that smashed into Frankie with brutal force. His body began to turn to stone as panic surged through the room. "Gaia! Frankie's turning to stone!" Usopp shouted. Lilith fired off another bubble gun shot, which S-Snake easily evades. Then S-Snake posed, but the moment she winked, just a wink, it was game over for the people around her. She used Love Mellow to stun everyone around her. When your best weapon is literally a wink attack, and it still works on experienced fighters. Boa Hancock would be proud. Back in the underground levels of Egghead, within the old Devil Fruit Research Lab, Shaka descended carefully. The area was dark, eerie, and eerily quiet. He had traced the Stella's location to this place, and now confronted a series of mysterious voices. "Are you the one behind all this?" they demanded. "Come out and show yourself." But the first sight that greeted him wasn't an enemy. It was Cypher Pole agents, collapsed, starved, and groaning. "Save us," one of them begged. Shaka froze. These agents were supposed to have left long ago. What were they still doing here? "It can't be," Shaka murmured, stunned. "You're those Cypher Pole agents? Why are you still here?" The voice of Vegapunk Stella rang out next. Shaka looked and was shocked to see Vegapunk. "Stella? So this is where you were." The two reunited briefly, shock and relief flashing across their faces. Stella looked grateful but exhausted. "I'm so glad you're okay. Let me help," Shaka said as he ran toward Stella. But Vegapunk asked Shaka, "Who's that you brought with you?" Shaka was confused with the question. But then suddenly a single click sound was heard, followed by a loud single gunshot rang out. Bang! The bullet slammed into the back of Shaka's head, blowing through the air like a bolt of death. Blood burst forth, or oil. The room fell into chaos. Cypher Pole agent screamed. Vegapunk Stella rushed forward, stunned Shaka. The one glimmer of control was gone in a flash, snuffing out hope with a single shot. Shaka's body crumpled to the ground as horror spread across every face. Back within the lab interior, Egghead, the so-called island of the future, a new conversation unfolded. Someone on the line had just dropped a bombshell. Uncle Kizaru is coming here. The news sent fresh ripples of dread through the defenders. The government wasn't holding back any longer. Stussy calmly confirmed it. CPO had been instructed to wait for Kizaru's arrival after eliminating the doctor. She observed that the government seemed to regard this as even more severe than the O'Hara incident. And there was a reason for that. Unlike O'Hara, Egghead wasn't defenseless. It had formidable combat and defensive capabilities. But there was more. The doctor wasn't just continuing the forbidden research the scholars had once protected. He had taken things much, much further. Because that's Vegapunk for you. Always breaking the rules and then building an entire kingdom on top of them. Communications had gone silent. Every transponder on the Labophase was down. Stussy, with voice comm, instructed to be called should there be any new developments. Yet there was no mistaking the tension. The enemy forces were coming loaded for bear, and no one was surprised. Beyond the control center, the bustling expanse of the Faberio Stratum pulsed with panic. Sentomaru, with a desperate voice, bellowed to the crowd, warning them not to hesitate, urging them to learn from history as the Navy aimed to repeat its past sins here. The words of the lady resounded, igniting the workers into a frenzy. Factory A's towering sign loomed over them as they scrambled in droves, screaming quickly before the Marines' show. Ships were being prepared in frantic haste. There was no longer time to deliberate. They had to get off the island. In another part of the lab's complex maze, chaos took a sharper form. On the third floor of Lab Building C, Frankie stood facing off with an ominous figure. His voice cut through the tension as he called out to Usopp and Lilith. His right side was frozen solid, but the left still moved, enough for one last punch. Even so, the defiant brat before her showed no signs of fear. "You damn brat," he snarled, yet the youth didn't flinch. Frankie continued that if she repented now, he'd let her off easy. But she's not making any moves to surrender. As S-Snake stood her ground, smaller figures around her panicked. One cried out in shock as an object clattered to the ground. S-Snake's eyes narrowed, her face stern and unyielding. Pythagoras shouted to S-Snake why she is doing this. S-Snake did not reply, but just raised her left foot above Pythagoras' head. Frankie screamed, "Pythagoras!" As a brutal strike crushed down, a massive explosion consumed the surroundings. Smoke and debris filled the air as footsteps echoed through the desolation. Thunk, thunk, thunk. S-Snake's silhouette advanced like a ghost through the rubble. Frankie gritted his teeth. Then a desperate voice was heard cutting through the haze. It commanded S-Snake to wait. Elsewhere, the atmosphere was no less urgent. On the second floor of Building A, Atlas, Robin, and Chopper were mid-sprint. Atlas expressed her concern. All those screams and explosions. Could everyone be all right? Robin confirmed that the Seraphim were running amok, something Atlas do not believe. Robin kept pace, calmly suggesting they focus, assuming everyone else was pinned down. Robin, meanwhile, worried aloud. What if Vegapunk's main body was vulnerable while everyone was distracted? Chopper's agreement was immediate. Atlas, ever the optimist, suggested checking out a sealed-off room she had dismissed as useless until now. The trio agreed, with Atlas leading the way. Back to the third floor of Building A. Brook had just released his spirit, declaring he'd scout for Vegapunk, but he suddenly blurted a warning cry out to Sanji he needed to look out. An enemy attack was coming straight at him. Yet Sanji didn't flinch. A massive fist barreled toward him, but he took the hit head-on, his expression cool, almost smug. "Don't act so surprised. This is the undying power of love." Above them on the fourth floor, Zoro and others were locked in another intense fight. Huffing and puffing, Zoro's frustration simmered. The flames protecting their enemies weren't going out, and it was driving him mad. "Those damn flames," he growled. Nearby, his crewmates speculated about the enemy's behavior. Perhaps the Hawkeye-looking figure had run off to thin the herd. Maybe he was prioritizing targets, saving the strongest for last. This theory seemed to settle with everyone as Zoro, already keyed up, roared that he'd chase the figure down himself. Without waiting for confirmation, he bolted. Luffy quickly shouted at Kaku to go after Zoro before he got lost, calling him Usopp. Kaku replied with a sigh that it is a bother as he shouts at Zoro to slow down. Then, as Zoro charged ahead, Luffy himself launched into action with a Gum Gum Hawk Gatling battle cry. The two warriors refused to let up. He declared he'd blast away the fire itself. Yet despite his raw power, his blows did nothing. Lucci shouted at him, warning that no matter how many times Luffy struck, it wouldn't work. Use your pathetic brain, Straw Hat. And then, in an ominous, chilling narrative overlay, the scene shifted. A lone figure kneels crying before a glowing giant memory paw as a narrator's voice seemed to fill the void. Only one day remained before the infamous Egghead incident. However, the wheels of this tale were set into motion 3 months ago. The scene darkened, rolling back 3 months earlier to the Holy Land, Mary Geos. It all began with a single tip, a voice requesting to speak with someone of power. Egghead's name was invoked, and the gears began turning. CP5 agents were dispatched to investigate the claim that Vegapunk was researching the Void Century, a forbidden subject since the days of O'Hara. Yet their inspection revealed nothing. Or so it seemed. As agents tried to leave Egghead, their ship mysteriously disappeared. No government ships returned. CP7 and CP8 were sent next, only to vanish as well. The anomaly couldn't be ignored any longer. This is Egghead again. Put me through to the top brass. Far away from Egghead, the grand chamber of Mary Geos echoed with a quiet gravity. Seated beneath towering pillars, the 5 elders convened in hushed conversation. A revelation had emerged that could no longer be ignored. The conversation between the elders and a mysterious figure had completely exposed the full extent of Vegapunk's treachery. With faces as grim as stone, the elders reached a chilling conclusion. They would order Dr. Vegapunk's assassination. The task fell to Cypher Pole Aegis Zero, the government's silent dagger. Yet this wasn't a simple mission. The 5 elders anticipated Vegapunk's resistance, fully aware of his formidable defensive and combative capabilities. To prepare, they reinforced their naval fleet with backups from multiple branches. They even raised their caution level to what could only be described as total war imminent. But that wasn't all. One of the 5 elders themselves would personally join the mission, escorted by Admiral Kizaru. When the old men have to move themselves, you know it's gotten serious. As if fate itself had a sense of dramatic timing, a further complication stormed into the scene. The sudden, unexpected appearance of Emperor Straw Hat Luffy's ship threw every calculation into disarray. The Thousand Sunny sailed boldly toward the island, its crew's laughter ringing in the wind. Government forces reacted with disbelief. Akaina choked on his cigar, exclaiming, "Did you say Straw Hat?" From top brass to rank-and-file soldiers, all were in disbelief. Straw Hat Luffy again. Him again. How many government headaches can one man cause in a single lifetime? In any case, things were moving toward a climax. Tomorrow, this chain of events would reach its culmination, and the outcome would shock the world. Amid Egghead's labyrinth of hallways and labs, a hollow knocking echoed, "Tock, tock, tock." Someone approached ominously. Inside a sealed room, Vegapunk demanded answers. "This was all you're doing?" came the shout. No response. Only more deliberate knocking as the mechanical door slowly slid open with a creak and a kerchak. A figure emerged from the shadows. Bloodied and battered, Dr. Vegapunk Stella himself was slumped in chains. His weary eyes flicked up as he faced his betrayer. The betrayal wasn't vague anymore. It had taken shape, spoken through steel and silence. "Answer me. Why are you doing this?" The response came not with rage, but with a chilling smile. From the shadows stepped York, her expression bright as ever, as if nothing in the world was wrong. Her voice was light, almost playful. "Oh, Stella, it's cause. I want to be a celestial dragon." The words landed like a hammer blow. Vegapunk's eyes widened. That was her answer. That was her ambition. The ultimate irony. How could she want to join such vileness after seeing it firsthand? York's face never faltered. She giggled as if she'd shared a harmless secret. And then she added one more truth. a truth that cut deeper than the rest. Honestly, the world really doesn't need more than one of us. As she spoke, her voice stretched with ominous finality. This wasn't just personal ambition. It was a declaration of war. Of all the plot twists in this arc, that one hits like a truck made of betrayal and snacks. A few hours earlier, York was already in motion. Her plan, twisted and meticulous, was laid bare in full. Puffing her cheeks and speaking with calculated ease, she explained how the world government wasn't just after the Stella body. They were after her as well. To protect herself, she'd activated a contingency plan. York stood before the Seraphim, issuing cold orders. With the frontier dome up again, she instructed them to kill everyone except for Stella, the underground hostages, and herself. No hesitation, no mercy. Her command was crisp and final. The Seraphim responded in unison. Understood. York elaborated on her tactics. When the Seraphim went rogue, it would trigger a whodunit-style investigation. That was the cover she needed to stay safe. If her true role was exposed, she wouldn't stand a chance in battle. She gave further instructions to S-Snake. She needs to capture her in front of the others, but be sure to free her when no one was looking. And for all of them, don't damage a certain area of the lab. With a devilish smile, York ended her briefing. Let the hunt begin. Smoke and alarm lights flared as her plan unfolded. Meanwhile, aboard the evacuation ships, frantic cries filled the air. The residents of Egghead scrambled aboard as the island's structures crumbled in the background. Hurry! Everyone onto the ships, someone yelled. We're getting the heck out of here. Even among the chaos, quiet observers watched. PX-3S stood at the ready, keeping a cold eye on the retreat. Sentomaru still appears to be struggling. Ships pulled away from the island as Egghead's silhouette faded into the distance. A black flag waved on the horizon, Blackbeard's flag, ominous shadows against the sky. Elsewhere, far from Egghead, a different game played out. Finally, back at Warland Elbaf, things took another sharp turn. Kid stood on deck, glaring as an unexpected lineup faced him down. But instead of fierce warriors, a row of eccentric faces greeted him. Pirates so outlandish they seemed straight out of circus. Have you come for our beloved chief? They asked, voices full of bizarre bravado. The introductions rolled in one after another. The princess of the bourgeoisie pirates, the leader of the social club pirates, the captain of the puddle pirates. Each one looked less intimidating than the last. What the hell? Are these jokers really with red hair? Kid demanded. Kid gritted his teeth, fists clenched tight as cannons readied. This is supposed to be the new world, isn't it? But the numbers didn't lie. Shanks' fleet, for all its colorful characters, had some heavy hitters, Killer said. Don't worry. I never pull my punches. Kid replied. On the shores of Warland Elbaf, an unmistakable tension hummed through the salt-kissed air. Ships gathered in formation. Fleets clustered like an army of giants waiting for the storm to break. And at the heart of it all stood one man, a silhouette so iconic even the bravest among them hesitated. The red-haired pirate chief stood tall on the ground, casually issuing a command that turned every head. With a calm voice, he ordered all ships to fall back. His crewmates protested in earnest, voices raised, declaring they wouldn't let anyone lay a finger on him. But Shanks remained resolute, thanking them for their sentiment. He appreciated it, but this battle was his to face. His call rang out once again, tell them to retreat, a decisive command that brooked no argument. Even as the crews buzzed in confusion, Shanks turned his gaze forward. A big shot had shown up, someone that couldn't be ignored. It was time to deal with him personally. The men scrambled to move the ships and clear a path, even as those around Shanks begged for just a little more time. They'd only just met up again after all. But Shanks wasn't here for small talk. He admitted he'd only intended to stop by for a moment, yet fate had other plans. Beneath the jovial mood and casual laughter, there was real weight in the air. Some of the gathered pirates admitted aloud that their lives had been spared countless times thanks to Shanks' flag flying overhead. The only enemy you need to worry about is Father Time, Granny O. Shanks joked, drawing raucous laughter. Shanks climbed up the deck, calm and focused, while everyone else cracked jokes about the fleet being notoriously weak. Ha ha ha. You're not supposed to say that out loud. Despite the levity, eyes turned serious once again as Shanks sized up the opposition. A bounty of 3 billion berries wasn't something to take lightly. These youngsters, these new-era pirates, were growing fast. Don't underestimate them, he warned. Still, Shanks was already walking forward, ready. He looked lively enough, Yasopp noted. And even if he hadn't fully recovered from Wano, he seemed up for a fight. In the ship, information flowed. Shanks asked a question. Any news on Blackbeard? None. Last they'd heard, he'd left Pirate Island. One man answered as he threw a rolled-up report to Shanks, revealing info about Captain Kidd. He sure did a lot of rampaging to make it this far, Shanks observed, glancing at the bounty poster in his hand with a thoughtful smirk. Kidd's name, Kidd's reputation, it had come far. From the South Blue, all the way here. In the other side, Kidd asked how many ships were there now. 9 ships and faces from bounty posters recognizable even from a distance. Suddenly, the scene ripped away from quiet preparation and exploded into pure chaos. Eustace Kidd himself stood, eyes blazing with fury and raw resolve. He didn't care who stood in his way. His mechanical arm charged up into a colossal cannon-like weapon. I'll blast them down to the ocean floor in 10 seconds flat, he roared. The water churned beneath their hulls as Kidd's weapon powered up. Massive gears spun, pistons hissed, and the unmistakable scream of metal against metal filled the air. Shanks' crew panicked as they saw the massive cannon from afar. Recognizing the insane scale of Kidd's attack, Shank immediately rushed over to Kidd's ship and shouted for Dory and Broggy to get into position as he goes. They said it was about time. In a split second, Shanks is now face-to-face with Kidd as he is currently preparing to shoot. Kidd's face shows how surprised and shaken to see Shanks in front of him. And then came the line that shook everything. Shanks, eyes sharp and deadly, called out 2 words that froze hearts mid-beat. Divine departure. With a single, godlike swing, Shanks' blade cut through not just the weapon, but the very fabric of the air. Kidd's jaw clenched in shock and realization as the wave of force shredded everything in its path. Yeah, that's red hair for you. The battle's crescendo arrived like an unstoppable tide. With a deafening kaboom, an explosion tore through the sea, engulfing ships in flame and fury. With splintered, iron twisted, and the ocean itself seemed to recoil in shock as Eustace Kidd's ship was obliterated in a single, overwhelming blast. The Kidd pirates could only scream as their captain fell. Their voices rang out, "Captain!" But Kidd was motionless, his body crumpled on the ground, battered and broken. Even Killer had been caught in the onslaught, thrown down while trying to help. Among the smoke and chaos, one silhouette walked calmly forward. Red-haired Shanks. His cape billowed behind him, footsteps measured and deliberate. With each tap and catchink of his boots, the Kidd pirates' fear grew louder than their voices. One by one, they surrendered. Weapons clattered to the ground. Men dropped to their knees, begging for mercy. "Please have mercy." "Red hair, we surrender," one pleaded, face contorted in panic. "Don't kill our captain." From among the groveling pirates, one trembling hand reached out, offering something with desperate urgency. "Here, take them. Our load poneglyphs." Their prized road to Laugh Tale was thrown away like a worthless stone, all in a final bid to spare their lives. Shanks remained silent, watching without emotion. His crew stood ready, but there was no more need for bloodshed. The Kidd pirates were finished. A crew member of Shank called for his chief over. Then Shanks quickly disappears as he leaped. Suddenly, a voice cried out from the edge of the battlefield. "Wait! Something's happening on the island." All eyes turned towards Elbaf as another storm brewed in the distance. The giants, Dory and Broggy, watched with grim satisfaction. Their towering forms loomed as they delivered the final blow. "Hey, little people, if you're going to point a cannon at someone's home," Broggy's voice rumbled like thunder, "you'd better be ready for when they fire back." With titanic strength, both giants lifted their weapons in unison. The air trembled as they bellowed in stereo. "Hakoku, sovereignty!" A devastating double strike crashed down, smashing through the remains of Kid's fleet, ripping through sea and ship alike as if the ocean were paper. Water erupted in twin pillars as the mighty vessels were reduced to nothing but splinters and swirling wreckage. That's what happens when you pick a fight on Elbaf. As the waves settled and silence finally returned, there was no more question. It wasn't just a loss. It was a decisive victory. Eustace Kid's ambition had been snuffed out entirely. One more name scratched on the race for the Pirate King's throne. The fate of Kid's crew was sealed. The giants' laughter echoing across the waves, and the Kid pirates sinking beneath them. A brutal reminder of what it meant to challenge legends in the New World. Shanks watched the horizon with calm, deadly certainty. On this day, in the New World, on the mighty shores of Elbaf, the Kid pirate crew, led by Eustace Captain Kidd, a man worth 3 billion berries, was completely eradicated. On the storm-shadowed seas of the New World, aboard the Blackbeard pirate's ship, a dark conversation unfolded. Blackbeard's men loomed with grim intent, clutching Kobe as their prisoner. Blackbeard himself lounged like a king on a throne, teeth bared in that familiar jagged grin. His voice dripped with amusement as he mocked Kobe's resistance, pointing out the futility of standing against a force like theirs. Kobe, bloodied but unbowed, calmly told them they were wasting their time, because he was a member of Sword. The room stilled for a heartbeat. Even the fearsome pirates paused in confusion. Sword, one of them echoed, eyes narrowing. Akiji, ever cool and detached, explained what it meant. Members of Sword were Marines, but ones who had officially resigned. They acted outside the system, without direct orders, disavowed by the Navy at any moment. It was a ghost unit, a phantom branch, answerable to no one. The implications hit the room differently. For Blackbeard, this meant Kobe was useless as a bargaining chip. His smile faded into a sharper edge of annoyance. Some of his men saw opportunity instead, but Akiji shut that down as well. SOAR members couldn't be used as hostages because the government wouldn't come for them. Talk about a built-in no-rescue policy. Undeterred, Blackbeard's grin returned. His eyes glinted with amusement as he leaned back. He liked chaos. He liked things that couldn't be predicted. While some ran, others gnawed at their own hands to stay in the fight. That was life, wasn't it? Laughing, he said he wasn't backing off his plan now. If things didn't go his way, at least he'd bloody the government's nose. After all, he sneered, the public wouldn't like hearing their hero, Kobe, had been lost. Meanwhile, Kobe sprinted through the fortress corridors of Pirate Island, breathing hard but determined. His mind spun in circles of doubt. Had anyone really been sent to rescue him? Could he be so important? As he ran, pirates shouted after him, swords drawn, warning each other that 3 Marines were attacking the port. 3. Kobe was stunned, but there was no time to process it. He had a duty. Outside, chaos reigned. Hakinosu, the pirate island shaped like a massive skull, became a hive of violence and shouting. News of Kobe's escape had spread like wildfire. Pirates fought among themselves, not just to catch Kobe, but because Cross Guild had placed a bounty on him. A 5-star bounty. Each star worth a chest of treasure. 500 million berries per star. 5 stars. For Kobe? His face appeared on wanted posters waved in the air as crowds of cutthroat pirates charged through the streets, sabers raised, eyes glowing with greed. It wasn't even about Blackbeard's orders anymore. Kobe was now a prize. Elsewhere on the island, the titanic skull-shaped rock face trembled. Avalo Pizarro, fused with the island fruit powers, sensed something, a tickling sensation where the unsold slaves were kept. The slaves were escaping, too. He called it out, and his monstrous voice echoed from the very rock face itself, making the island quake. Among the panicked prisoners, Kobe struggled on, dragging a massive iron ball chained to his leg. Sweat poured down his face, but he didn't stop. Other prisoners cheered for him, calling him a saint, offering to act as decoys for his sake. The gratitude on Kobe's face was genuine, but so was the weight on his shoulders. He wasn't just running for himself. Nearby, the Blackbeard Pirates' Titanic captains debated who should capture Kobe. Avalo Pizarro, Shiryu of the Rain, Vasco Shot, San Juan Wolf. Monsters, every one of them, each wielding terrifying devil fruit powers. Pizarro fused with the island itself. Shiryu able to vanish like a ghost. Vasco drunk and dangerous with his glug-glug fruit. And Wolf, a literal giant battleship of a man. Vasco Shot casually suggested burning the whole town down to flush Kobe out. He laughed about it, but there was a real risk of Teach getting angry over the collateral damage. Wolf, snoring nearby, added to the tension by simply existing. A colossal giant looming over the city, his snores alone rattling buildings. Still running, Kobe dodged pirate blades and angry shouts, his body burning from the effort. In his heart, he knew he couldn't escape on foot. But if he could just buy time, just enough time for the others to get away. A flashback appears as he continues to run. Blackbeard's voice echoed, cutting through the madness like a blade through smoke. Blackbeard's crew surrounded Kobe. So, hero, tell me, do you like my idea of making Pirate Island a full-fledged nation? Blackbeard laughed loud enough for the whole island to hear, declaring the rise of the Blackbeard Kingdom. He envisioned it as a government-recognized pirate nation, one where he would rule as king. Kobe, panting and bleeding, answered back with defiance. Teach himself loomed with a devilish grin, declaring that the government would never sacrifice someone like Kobe so easily. He boasted that Kobe was too valuable a hero to simply be abandoned, a bargaining chip against the world. Kobe, however, stood defiant, bloodied but unbowed, his voice unwavering as he revealed a critical truth. He was a member of Sword. The declaration sent ripples of confusion through the room. The Blackbeard pirates exchanged puzzled glances. Kazan calmly explained that Sword members were Marines no longer officially recognized on paper. They had relinquished their official status and Marine codes, operating freely beyond standard command protocols. These were soldiers disavowed at will, able to engage even emperors without authorization. Teach chuckled, weighing the implications. Kobe being a Sword member meant he held no formal value as a Marine hostage. Still, Blackbeard wasn't about to let go of his plans so easily. Back to the present, Kobe's still running, as he also remembers how Perona helped free him in exchange to helping free Moria in the deeper cells. Pirates shouted warnings as 3 Marines stormed the port. Amid the pandemonium, Kobe carried a heavy iron ball shackled to his leg, but his determination never wavered. Kobe's own internal conflict surfaced when he heard the 3 Marines attacking. Though he knew his value as a Sword operative was diminished in this hostage situation, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe someone would come for him. That fragile hope clung to him as he sprinted through the fortress corridors, dodging guards and prisoners alike. Chaos had already begun. The island was engulfed in absolute chaos. A collision of forces between Blackbeard's notorious crew and the unorthodox, fierce operatives of Sword. The next scene shows the 3 huge Marines attacking the port and appears to be pushing the pirates to the town center. Next came Kujaku, wielding the whip fruit, commanded buildings themselves, scolding structures as if they were living beings. Her commands turned the townscape into an unpredictable maze, corralling pirates toward the trap in the town center. As Kobe got surrounded by the pirates, he assumed it is the end of the line, but Hibari, a Navy HQ commander, appeared on the battlefield using flower bullets to disable firearms. Though Kobe was stunned by her sudden appearance, Hibari brushed it off as a coincidence, pretending she'd just been out for lunch, her face looking flustered as she was saying that. Vice Admiral Prince Garus confirmed they're all set on a Dindin Mushi call from Captain Tashiji. He also mentioned Kobe is safe too. Being a clay man wielding the squelch fruit, he had already been manipulating the terrain, driving pirates toward the town center. His powers made it appear as though the buildings themselves were moving. After receiving the confirmation, Tashiji shouts preparation complete. Helmeppo shouts to everyone to hang on tight, and Garp with a maniacal grin cried blast off. Their battleship suddenly soared over the island. Pirates and prisoners alike looked up in disbelief as the legendary figure stood at its helm. Vice Admiral Garp, and he is so happily laughing that tears are coming out of his eyes. His entrance silenced the entire island. Everyone was struck dumbfounded with that scene. Even Shiryu and Vasco shot. The pirates can't find a way to escape from the town center. They are all trapped. Suddenly Garp leapt from the ship, delivering an earth-shattering punch dubbed Galaxy Fist. The impact was cataclysmic. Buildings crumbled, the ground split apart, and pirates were sent flying as Garp declared his wrath upon those who had dared to kidnap his irreplaceable protege, Kobe. His booming voice echoed through the rubble, making it clear that this was a hero's rampage.